All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deepak Pahwa. Let me quickly introduce myself. I chair the Innovation Committee at PhD Chamber of Commerce, and I also run an engineering company called Bry-Air, which had its birth more than 50 years ago in the United States, and today it is headquartered in India. It employs about 1,500 people. We are in very specialized in environmental control, air treatment, and have offices and some subsidiaries in different parts of the world. We are going to have partners speak, three of them, and each one is being assigned about 5 minutes. And then we have case studies, which are going to be also very interesting case studies you will get, and they are also about 5 minutes each. And thereafter, we will have a question answers wrap up. I will take a few minutes to introduce the speakers. One is June Smith. June is all about helping to grow US, UK manufacturing. Dr. Jatindher is a very able and eminent person at PhD. He is in charge of our innovation committee, and he helps in specific domains of education, startup and industry, 4.0, electronics, arbitration, dispute resolution, and many other things. We have Karen French. She's a partner at Squire, Patton, Boggs, Leeds office. We'll have Cara, Haffey, private business leader, Northern Ireland, and automotive and manufacturing leader, PwC UK. And Dr. Devashish Bhattacharjee. He joined Tata Steels in the R&D function in 1996, and he's functioning as the Chief of Research and Development Scientific Services between 2002 and 2009. He has got a lot of international peer-reviewed journal publications and 20 patents. Mike Maddock, Performance Engineered Solutions, PES Limited. He's the managing director, co-owner there, and has multiple business environments. Mike is a visiting professor with the Faculty of Engineering in the University of Sheffield. We also had Ryan Nixon and Nexene Publishing Limited. He's a chartered chemist and member of the Royal Society of Chemistry. We have Arun Kumar Jha, Director General of National Productivity Council. His list is pretty long to introduce him, but he is in the Ministry of Commerce of Industry in the Government of India, and he's now the Director General of National Productivity Council since 2019. Mike Eldred, Industrialization Director at BAE Systems. Mike is currently the Program Director accountable for the successful execution of few high-value and complex defense acquisition programs. And we also have Qatar Zaina Pekiorek. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Kat is a sales manager at Macalo, using professional experience to build relationships. Then we have Raghavan Muralidharan, Chief Technology Officer at Tata Power. I think I have covered everyone. If I missed, I'm sure the moderator will help introduce them. Now, let's go straight into the trade flow and opportunities. I think I've given a brief introduction about myself, so I'll not add to the introduction that I've made for myself and of the others. Interestingly, I've spoken on many occasions in different parts of the world in different stages of life. And I'd like to start by saying that I've always believed that tourism leads to trade and trades leads to investment. So rather tourism precedes trade and trade precedes investment. Fortunately, in the case of UK, tourism and cultural background and the weave is so strong that we don't even have to worry about that. And trade has been flowing very strongly between the two countries, investment too. So the groundwork is immensely good for whatever we want to accomplish between the two countries. While people will have political reasons to argue one way or another whether Brexit was good or not, but I'd like to look at the positive side of the Brexit and not the negative ones. The positive side is that it has given UK the nimbleness, the ability to do a lot of things that probably it was slightly fettered to do, as has been shown by the example of the co-vaccine and other issues that you're all familiar with in Europe. So I think UK has been looking around beyond Europe, and so finds an opportunity to partner with India. Geopolitically, India is also looking at partnering with many countries where we can have more investment and technology flows. And you're familiar with the geopolitical scenes in this part of the world. So India is in many ways trying to position itself to be very friendly, business friendly. Though, of course, we have come a long way and we have a long way to go. I'll dwell a little bit very quickly on that subsequently. But let's go straight on to the opportunities that I think exist. And before giving you some specifics, I'd like to mention here, typically, India has fallen to the share of manufacturing in the GDP from a better number, shall we say, to close to about 20% today. And everyone thinks that that needs to be reversed. So India is wanting to become at least 25% as a percentage of its GDP. And whether you look at 2025 or 2030, in 10 years, I'll take the figure of 2030. What that translates into is not only the GDP growth, but within the GDP growth, the 25% achievement in manufacturing percentage translates that in 10 years, the manufacturing must grow to 3 times the size of what it is today. That's a phenomenal growth on the foundation of what we already have today to achieve that percentage of growth. So the opportunity is not small. If we do it right and we make the right partners throughout the world, but more specifically as we are focused today in UK, the other part I want to come to is the manufacturing. Unlike countries that we are compared with, like China, etc., I do think that we pride ourselves in being what they call a knowledge-based manufacturing country, as opposed to cookie cutting and large volume manufacturing. So the high-end manufacturing capability in India is tremendous compared to any other place. And that therefore brings you the opportunities in automobile, components, defense, aerospace, special machinery. India will become one of the largest producers of mobile phones, electronics, engineered and knowledge-based projects I've mentioned. Pharma, we are already the pharmacy to the world. Chemicals, there's going to be huge growth in the sector of chemicals. Renewables, wind turbines, we are one of the largest producers of wind turbines. Now PV is getting into be in a big way. And we are getting ready for lithium-ion battery cells and therefore also EV production. The list is endless. So how do we view India? And I'd like to give you a little bit more about the India view. When anyone invests in India or partners with India, you have to look at domestic India demand mainly, but also look at domestic demand plus export base. So that's a huge opportunity out of India for the export. And also as a third option, you can look at India as an alternate supply chain source. And everyone is trying to cover their bets on an alternate supply chain. So that's the third reason. And finally, and fourth one, which I had already mentioned here, is the knowledge-based export on engineering goods and services. On services today, most of the Fortune 500 or the big ones have established huge research and development centers in India. And therefore, many companies, even I'm working with a company which you would all know, Train, and they have got a center of excellence and they support the whole world in technology and many items out of India. So with our intellect, capable people, many companies have chosen India as the base for knowledge-based research and development. So now let's evaluate this in terms of ease of doing business. Ease of doing business, as I mentioned, we were good, but not so good. We are getting there. We are improving. We are trying to self-assess ourselves. I think the government has done many things, but there's a lot of room to grow in that direction. The infrastructure, roads and ports and communication. So much is going to be invested in addition to what has been invested already that we will see a huge change in this in the next 5 to 7 years. So everything is good in that direction. Compliances are problem. We have too many compliance requirements, but I think sometimes it is good. It's a double-edged sword. It gives for more confidence to an investor that there are compliance needs and therefore it's important. Legal, particularly IP, India is very, very mature today in terms of intellectual property, and that's something people are afraid of going anywhere else. The financial system is extremely well established. Human infrastructure, both managerial, technical knowledge base, and skills are phenomenal here. You can see some of the top CEOs of the top technology companies in America, all are headed by Indians, and all those people are not having their roots in the US. They all studied here. They graduated here, went to America, and today they are CEOs, I don't need to name them. And that is also true in UK. You have lots of people, both of Indian ethnic origin, settled in UK and out of India, who are doing immensely well because of the human infrastructure that we have. Labor laws are undergoing a tremendous change in this country. I don't know how many of you are familiar with. There's a new labor code. I hope that comes in well. It augurs well for the country. And then the political system, while people will have different views, it is stable. And we are seeing more openness in this. Some of us may want things in a particular way and manner, but I think we are seeing a lot more openness. So these are some of the things that come to my mind when I say is the opportunities and where the road was leading to in a partnership between India and the UK. Indians invest in the UK, UK invests in India. I think it's a win-win situation for both. That's enough for me for now as an introduction. We will let the host take you to the next speaker. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that great introduction there. So next up we have June Smith from Make UK.
So thank you everybody and welcome to the Make UK presentation. Thank you for including Make UK. My name's June Smith. I'm the Regional Director for Make UK in the north of England. I just wanted to give you just some very brief facts about the UK manufacturing sector. We're actually the 9th largest manufacturing sector in the world as a country, and 44% of our exports, of our output goes to export. So we are very keen on building relationships outside the UK, and we are prolific exporters. And I'd like to think very good at what we do in terms of our manufacturing output. So, so we are an organisation that is both regional with 10 regional offices. We have a large portfolio of policy teams in Westminster. We have a relationship with something called CMET, which is the 27 member states of the EU and the UK coming together to represent 200,000 businesses in the manufacturing sector in the EU, and we have global connectivity with people like, for example, the National Association of Manufacturers in the States. So whilst we're a membership organisation, I would say we're an international organisation also. So we are the voice of UK manufacturing, and our aim is to provide the most supportive environment that we can for manufacturing. I can't speak as fast as my slides, unfortunately. And the way we support the manufacturing environment is that we influence government, we critique government, we provide them with the intelligence they need to make the manufacturing landscape the best it can be, and we provide services and training to our manufacturing members, connecting them to their customers, suppliers and regional stakeholders. So our priorities for this year, 2021, are to help manufacturers thrive in this new environment that they found themselves in outside the EU, to enable them to increase and adopt digital technologies and efficiencies, to help drive the manufacturing sector in that green net zero revolution and position the UK manufacturing sector as global leaders, and provide the skills base that we need both now and in the future for the manufacturing sector by providing and retaining young talent. So the well-being of UK manufacturing does depend on our trading success, and as Deepak has said earlier, we have a new trading environment, but Brexit actually provides a new relationship with the EU and new market opportunities outside the EU, and we recognise that. So Make UK is working very closely with government on trade policy. We're helping our members, our manufacturing members, to understand what the new global trends and opportunities might be. That's via two-way intelligence, them telling us what they need our government to do to support them entering new markets, and us telling our members what those new markets are offering. And we'll also be planning virtual and actual trade visits, supporting missions like this one, and planning visits to the World Trade Organization. So how do we support our members, the actual businesses? Well, we've got a real broad portfolio of services which include a growth consultancy angle and looking at productivity, other aspects such as cyber security, which we all know is a real big issue, the more so as we're working from home especially. I've talked about our priorities, so we're supporting 4.0, net zero. We then look at things like business insurance and a very broad portfolio of services. We're particularly strong in HR, legal and employment law, and we started doing this about 125 years ago when two Siemens brothers realised that there was nobody actually being the voice of the employer, as the unions were getting quite strong in Britain. So we like to think we're really good at employment law, actually winning 95% of tribunals when cases get to litigation, employing our own barristers and solicitors. We also sit on the Health and Safety Executive, which means that we advise and support government in their health and safety legislation and their understanding of what a health and safety working environment looks like. And conversely, we also help our members to keep their workers safe in their working environment. And on the sustainability angle, we're working very closely with government to facilitate the net zero, and we're working with them on the COP26 and the G7 summits, which will be happening this year, really to enable manufacturing in the UK to be the solution to the net zero agenda and not the problem. And then we provide a full and comprehensive portfolio of training. So whether that's organisational, people or process training, if it's to do with manufacturing, we are the trainers for the manufacturing sector, with a very large and substantial training organisation in the Midlands, probably turning out circa 2,000 advanced manufacturing apprentices every year in normal times. We have two organisations which sit under the Make UK umbrella. One of them is UK Steel. So I know we've got Tata on the call later. So we champion and we represent the interests of the steel sector with government, and in previous times we're instrumental to the talks with Tata and British Steel, for example. And our other sister organisation is NDI, National Defence Industries. So we work very closely with the MOD, the Ministry of Defence, prime contractors, and I'm delighted that one of those, BAE Systems, and Michael's on the call today, and their subsequent supply chains to build capacity in defence, aerospace and the space sectors within the UK. So in summary, basically we're all things manufacturing and dedicating to making the UK manufacturing scene the best it can be. That's it from me for now. Thank you very much for listening.
June, what a fantastic canter through Make UK that was. I think it goes without saying that Make UK are sort of extremely well-regarded body in the UK supporting our manufacturing businesses. Karen, I will hand over to you. So Karen from Squire, Patton, Boggs, to do a bit of an introduction about who Squire, Patton, Boggs are and how they can support manufacturing businesses. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you, Deepak, and good afternoon and evening to you all. A little bit about myself. I'm a partner at Squire, Patton, Boggs, based in our Leeds office, and have through my working career always been based in the north of England, being a Yorkshire lass born and bred. But find myself working now with Squire, Patton, Boggs, who are a global law firm with offices across the breadth of the globe, but we cannot have an actual office in India due to regulatory restrictions. But that has not stopped us working with Indian-based businesses and in connection with Indian law firms who we have some great relationships. Our role in this event today and beyond, in addition to being patrons and supporters of the Northern Asian Power Mission, which of course we're delighted to do, absolutely delighted to do, and thanks to those others who are fellow supporters that are on the call today and have been supporting the other masterclasses through the week. But as lawyers, if I put my lawyer hat on, our place, I suppose, is as a support to businesses who are looking at inward or outward trade with India and the UK, and in particular through the Northern Asian Power Mission in the north of England. And we can help businesses on some of the things that are important to get right at the start, as it were, to help you trade, because we'll be hearing today from people who have experienced and are experienced at what it is like to trade in and out of the UK with India and the UK. But the legal role sits hand in hand with other advisors on the finance side and banking, of course, support industries. But we look at things such as jurisdictional issues, regulations, tax, of course, contract, IP, which has already been mentioned as something important. We would look at IP and trademarks and to protect those for you. The employment laws that will be relevant to your business, and immigration, to name but a few. We do have over 50 of our lawyers that support our India business unit, and we have been recognised by the ERA Indian Legal Awards as being the International Law Firm of the Year in 2018-19. And we're currently ranked in the top 12 foreign lawyers for the work we do in India. So, you know, we do put the effort in, and hope we can share our experience with you. You'll hear from me a little bit later today. I'm going to be chairing the second panel session after June has chaired hers, and I'll be joined in that by some of the other attendees. So very, very much looking forward there to a slightly deeper dive into some of the issues and tips that our businesses that have joined us today can share with us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen, for that introduction. I will swiftly hand over to Cara Haffey, who's from PwC. So, Cara, would you like to introduce yourself and introduce PwC? Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to everyone, and thank you for having me. Yeah, very swiftly, just wanted to offer our services to those in terms of looking at the manufacturing sector, which I lead in the UK. We have an Indian sort of business office in our London offices, where we make sure that there's a good connection between our firms. And in fact, actually, the last international trip I was on was to Mumbai, so it's holding a special memory for me at the moment, given I haven't travelled since. But very much kind of looking at the financing, your structuring, and tax, etc., around anything that you'd want to do with the trading between countries and investment. I suppose from PwC's point of view at the moment in manufacturing, we're working quite a lot with Make UK, very much focused on the digitalisation of the sector, the cybersecurity aspects of kind of how that digitalisation is changing. And quite frankly, continuing on the productivity piece that we have in the UK in terms of the productivity curve we need to continue to go on the investment. But in the interest of time, Daniela, I'm happy to kind of leave it there. And I think hopefully people know how much we support this sector and very much want to work with everybody to help continue to further the trade between the countries.
Many thanks, Cara. I just want to quickly hand over to PhD Chamber. Just so everybody is aware, PhD Chamber are part of the Northern Asian Power Mission. They've supported this from its absolute sort of conception stage and been with us throughout. So if I could please hand over just for a few words from Dr. Jatindher Singh. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela and PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industries. It's a pleasure for being in this very, very important August gathering, and thank you for partnering with us. So I will just tell about the brief of PhD Chamber and how this symbiotic relationship can exist between the SMEs of India as well as the SMEs of UK. So in terms of our organization, PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry, it was established in 1905. So it is around 116 years old chamber. It's a proactive national apex chamber working at grassroots levels with strong national and international linkages. And our chamber acts as a catalyst in the promotion of industry, trade and entrepreneurship. And through our research-based policy advocacy role, we positively impact the economic growth and development of the nation as well as globe. We have, in fact, international offices in some of the countries, and we have close to 1.5 lakh companies as the member base. And the focus is basically on the development of small and medium enterprises. We have also co-opted many national and industry associations and organizations through more than 100 MOUs, which are signed through bilateral, treaties and agreements. And the chamber, we operate through different expert committees and task force comprising of representatives of member companies. Mr. Deepak Pahwa is also the member of PhD Chamber, and you have, listened to his thoughts also in terms of how, as a company, how, he's promoting, trade and commerce between India and UK also. And the most important thing is that we act as a catalyst for the rapid economic development and prosperity of the community in the entire region through promotion of trade, industry, as well as services. In fact, if you see the total, ecosystem of Indian SMEs, and as we see, we work closely with our members, with the decision makers, we are seeing that, especially the medium-sized companies, they are raring to internationalize. They are very eager to access to cutting-edge technology and good practices, which can help them to become globally competitive. And many of them already, they are in that position. So having the cost advantage of domestic production, many, medium-sized enterprises, they're very keen to collaborate and invest in technologies that can help them to move to the next stage. And as we know that the manufacturing sector is constantly adapting to new, domains like Industry 4.0. And a lot of research and development thrust is being given in our country also through different science, technology and innovation policies. There are a lot of, now supplier and customer interdependencies. And also there's a lot of lifetime product maintenance and repair. So given the respective priorities and positioning of UK and Indian SMEs, so it's clear that there's a potential for them to realize significant synergies through working together, and that doing so we could in fact help SMEs in both countries to achieve their ambitions. And this platform or this ecosystem that is being created is one of the steps in that direction. And as we know that British companies, the UK, they have strengths in research and development, manufacturing, process control, technology. And in India, we are the IT superpower. We have the best of these skills, and our Indian businesses are also keen to have access to these facilities and capabilities. And also there are many successful firms that already they are trying to adapt their physical and intellectual infrastructures, and they want to exploit changes in technology as manufacturing is becoming faster and more responsive to changing technological global markets and coming closer to the customers. So the priorities, what we feel from Chamber is that the quality of skills of the workforce is definitely a critical factor in capturing the competitive advantage. And I am sure that both the governments are working proactively in this direction. We are also, in fact, giving strong recommendations to, in fact, have schemes for public support like knowledge transfer partnerships or funding of the technology strategy. And many other things. As we know that right now in India, we have a very important keynote initiative, Make in India, which aims to make India a high value and efficient global manufacturing hub, where the manufacturing generates close to 100 million jobs and close to 25% of India's GDP. This we are envisaging by 2022, which is right now 16%, currently. So Make in India, this incorporates high-tech manufacturing and Industry 4.0 at its heart. And this is already, bearing fruit with many global giants, including we have the Perkins Engines, Rolls-Royce, JCB, BAE Systems. They're all setting up manufacturing plants in India because we are an expanding market. And there's a lot of growing potential of India as an exporting hub. So there's an immense opportunity for UK businesses to engage as strategic partners with Indian counterparts. So I will rest my presentation, my deliberation here, and I look forward to more, partnerships and co-creation models between India and UK businesses. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving this opportunity.
Dr. Singh, thank you so much for that. That was absolutely brilliant. And just again, thank you for your support throughout this whole programme and process. So we're at the stage now where we are just about to go into our case studies, where we're going to hear from either some of the businesses across the Northern Powerhouse and some businesses in India about their journeys and what they've been up to, their products, and to give us a bit more insight now into how to actually break down some of those trade barriers and get the machine working. So my first case study today is from Dr. Mohan, who's from the Confederation of Indian Industry. So Dr. Mohan, I understand you're going to talk to us around ergonomics and industry and the sort of industry 4.0 type of theme. So if I can hand over to you now for your 5-minute case study. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. I think it is a wonderful forum. I've been listening to the keynotes. Fantastic. So I will be giving the perspective of the smart manufacturing opportunities in India as the key element of Industry 4.0, which is now being seen as a key driver, key role to play for reaching the 25% contribution for manufacturing, which we aspire to achieve. And I will be also talking about the operator ergonomics things. I will give a case study. Let me just change my slide. Yeah. So a quick overview. India aspires to be a $5 trillion economy next 5 years, and Industry 4.0 smart manufacturings are leading this journey. India is consistently rising on its global innovation index and ease of doing businesses, and many developed nations are willing to engage with India. Only in the scope of Industry 4.0, we envisage a $2.1 billion opportunity in just next 2 years. So there is a huge potential. The potential of course, the Industry 4.0 is huge. It will release around 4.7% of India's GDP through unwinding of the working capital, and it is estimated to increase its industrial efficiency by 20%. These are some numbers, and we are quite excited about it. But the big question is India ready for the big leap through this Industry 4.0 and smart manufacturing exercise? So here are some numbers with respect to the target of 25% that India and Indian industry has taken for itself. The smart manufacturing ecosystem. There are about 10 active Indian unicorns engaged in 1 billion, which have $1 billion evaluation. They are engaged in IoT and telematic services. There are some venture capitalists. There are private section incubators. These numbers are basically reflecting of the Indian footprints in smart manufacturing ecosystem and Industry 4.0. The red ones are where we are recommending government to emphasize more in terms of its priority engagements. But when we see about, I will now come to my case study. I'll be talking about the 3 elements. The first element is M2M communication, clear. The second is 5G, the communication infra. But I think the most crucial element of this smart manufacturing exercise is going to be the smart operator, which has to integrate all 3 of them, which actually works in an environment which is consisting of various insurance policies, consumer connects, facility management, retail mapping, utility. He has to work in an environment which is full of diverse multitasking. That is why we are In my previous employment, I was with JCB India in my previous tenure, the case study which I'm presenting, a UK company again. We started calling it as autonomous decision maker because he's a user as well as a user of the technology. So he's an autonomous decision maker. He works in procurement, he works as asset management, shop floor, quality control, shipment, customer, and takes smart designs to smart machines, smart monitoring, controlling them smartly to lead to the overall ambit of smart manufacturing basically revolves around this autonominator. He has to play its role in service, productivity, accuracy, connectivity, safety, and while doing all this, we map the efficiency of a smart manufacturer on it, the ergonomics based on its effectiveness, its efficiency, and satisfaction that he gets from his job. So what we actually found was that when we integrate this smart operator with our product and manufacturing and treat the operator as a key member of this chain of smart manufacturing, we have to give the due considerations to his ergonomics, and we started coining with the word ergonomics 4.0, which essentially led to ourselves to formulate as a function of human efficiency, communication system efficiency, and smart machine efficiency. So these three efficiency parameters we measured using cameras and turboligs for the efficiency of the activities of the operator, autonominator using the virtual and augmented realities, interacting with its environments, and he's supposed to wear the VR headsets while interacting with the smart manufacturing supply chain that he is in. He is being mapped here to see to measure the effectiveness, you can see. And then the second element was the efficiency measurement, which was basically measuring its working time with respect to the planned production time. And there were objective measures, which were, of course, you can see them, some red, amber, green charts here, indicative turboligs just to measure its efficiency. And then the satisfaction which the operator is getting while working in a particular condition. So this is a picture I have taken from the internet as an indicator picture where a person is, while doing some sports, we will put some electrode gadgets onto its interactive surfaces to see the stresses coming on the system. Mapping it directly to the assembly lines, we can see using these sensors what is the most effective and most satisfying position for an operator to work on, which would later be translating it into a formation, providing him with an exoskeleton or maybe a powered exoskeleton. All these functions finally led ourselves to see that the smart factory ergonomics efficiency depends upon a number of parameters, which I've just mentioned here as total time to produce, total lost time in defective production, machine run time, delay time, failure. There are many parameters. But what is important to be noted, the challenge, is that the smart factories of Industry 4.0, the need and the integrate is huge. The cyber physical systems are bringing entirely new dimension, new concept of interaction. For India, essentially, it is now the integration has really been high only for last 7-8 years. So operators will use these handheld interactive devices. They will have to be taught on these smart manufacturing systems. So to scale up their interaction and processing of the data, we'll have to train them with the handling of the cognitive workload which comes on them, on the operator. So the overall effectiveness of the smart manufacturing lines that we set up depend hugely upon these factors, which of course were formulated as a mathematical summing total all the effects of the parameters. And we could reach out to we could meet our goals. There were positive trends in productivity as well as effectiveness, which we could find. Well, that was which I could quickly cover in my 5-minute time that was allotted to me. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everyone. Any questions, please direct towards my mail ID, which is mentioned here on the screen. Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Mike, just to quickly introduce Mike to the rest of the audience, is the co-owner, MD and co-owner of Performance Engineered Solutions. He's a visiting professor at the University of Sheffield, Make UK membership board member, and a DIT export champion. Mike, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Well, I say good afternoon, good evening, and also I can see one of our colleagues is on from the US, so it's good morning as well. We're really an international audience. Myself and Adrian will be talking through and taking you through Graphene. We're on a little bit of a mission as a collaborative team to re-promote and reposition Graphene. So we'll spend the next 5 minutes just talking you through that. Right. As we said, quick introduction. I'm Mike Maddock. I'm a co-owner of Performance Engineered Solutions Limited, which is a high-performance engineering business. Visiting professor at the University of Sheffield. Work within Make UK with June, who you've seen earlier. So I'm co-chair of the regional board and also of the main membership board. I'm also an export champion for the Department of International Trade, and I support the Sheffield City region in strategic views and export also. Adrian, to yourself.
Yes, I'm Adrian Nixon. I'm director of Nixine Publishing Limited. I'm also the editor of the Nixine Journal. A little more about that in a minute. I'm a co-director with Mike of Nixine Limited and a chemist by training, so with the Royal Society of Chemistry. And intriguingly, I'm also a board member for the International Space Elevator Consortium. And maybe we can touch on that later in the discussion.
And the reason we brought this image up on the previous slide, just in Capitol Hill, we were invited over to the US by Senator Wicker in 2019 as part of a team to discuss strategies and the use of graphene in the US. So we're really well connected from a global perspective. I'll go over this very quickly. So PS Performance is a high performance and engineering business. 95% of the work we do is under non-disclosure agreements, so we can't tell you what we're working on, what we're doing. So there's a few images to give you an idea. It's the usual point in this industry, but we work across multiple sectors, really collaborative international business. So working in wind energy, automotive, which is race and commercial, aerospace research. We do a lot of government funded research in collaboration with OEMs. So right across the board. I don't want to go into too much detail, but also in terms of material specialization, lightweighting, data acquisition and creation of IP for ourselves and also for our clients.
And we spend time with Mike at the Advanced Manufacturing Park, but also we're based at the Graphene Engineering Innovation Centre, which is on the University of Manchester campus in UK. And Manchester is where graphene was discovered, the Nobel Prize was won, and we spend quite a lot of time there. Not so much at the minute with the pandemic and lockdown, but you'll normally find us on the top floor of that building. And this is what we do. We're an information product. We have a journal, which is a completely independent subscription model. So we have customers around the world who buy into our service. And in return, we give them a completely independent view of all the technical activity taking place around the world, all the commercial activity, and put it in a monthly journal. And we distill everything down in plain English for decision makers. So usually one item to a page, bullet points, and the so what at the bottom. As Mike has said, we've done work in the States quite a bit. We do work around different parts of the world, but just to give you a flavour here, we do special editions of our journal. We've contributed to the US-China Economic Security Review Commission report. We're currently working on a report for the US government, which has a deadline of tomorrow. And that will be landing on the desks of people in the Senate and the Congress. And intriguingly, NASA have also invited us to present to their rocket scientists at NASA Ames. So in 2 weeks' time, I'll be doing something in a little bit more depth with a bunch of rocket scientists as an audience.
And so what we'd like to show through this collaboration in terms of our international perspective in promoting graphene, and it's from a global perspective, but we can see there in terms of how the US have embraced us and how, as a small group of businesses, that we are shaping the strategy for the US government. This is Nixine Limited, so this is the collaboration. So where we have two businesses, but as Adrian mentioned earlier, we have come together and set up a company called Nixine Limited, which is a manufacturing collaboration. I won't go into too much detail, but we were formed in 2018. It's a UK investment platform, and we're researching and developing sheet graphene and also the manufacturing process and the research and development protocols for that. And we're currently looking for investment in that particular area based on also our global expertise. So to give you a very brief overview for those of you who may not be familiar with graphene or have dismissed graphene because of the hype curve, as we call it. Give you a quick overview. It's 200 times stronger than steel, world's best conductor, 100 times more tear resistant than steel, one of the best conductors of heat, which is really interesting. And for us, the fact is across the X and Y axis and not Z. So it's really interesting in applications for drawing heat out of high performance engines as a single application. It's flexible and transparent and the world's most impermeable material. That just gives you an overview. And commercial applications, so very quickly just give you a taster. People are saying at the moment, we've dismissed graphene, we've looked at it and we haven't reviewed it. Well, we've been working with and talking to Ford and one of the subscribers to the magazine. At the moment, they have graphene in over 5.2 million vehicles, and they discovered it almost by accident. But by putting an intern in a corner, gave him a little bit of graphene, and what they discovered was a 30% improvement in heat endurance, 20% mechanical improvement, and 70% noise reduction. On the right is an example of concrete. This is in Yucatan in Mexico, and basically a conference center that's been built with a seawall, roads, etc., using graphene, which basically by a 0.03% of volume in concrete has created a 25% stronger material. So you can either build 25% more or you can reduce the amount by 25%. And in simple terms, that would reduce the global emissions today if we adopted it internationally by 2%, which would take our global emissions targets and break them. On the bottom left is a detector, a field effect transistor. So basically, it's a lab on a disk from Cara, and through this you can do 5 separate independent tests. One of them can be coronavirus, which we've worked through, but we can talk about that later. And another one interesting on the right-hand side is through Vivek at the University of Manchester set up a company called Space Blue, which basically is upcycling waste tires and then turning into mats. So therefore, it's a better and stronger product than it originally was when it was the tires. And you will know the issues of tires recycling. So at the moment, there's over 200 million tons surplus of waste in tires, and the space dumps in Kuwait and across the world can be seen from space. So this is another challenge, and where graphene can really take the lead and turn the globe around with material applications. And that's us. Thank you very much.
Daniel, I'm going to now take you on to, and the audience on to Arun Kumar Jha as the next case study presenter. Arun Kumar Jha is, as I had mentioned earlier, Director General of National Productivity Council. He's had a pretty long and interesting career. He entered the service in IES cadre way back in 1985. He's been an assistant director on the Bureau of Industrial Costs and Prices till 1990. He was then joint director of Rural Employment and Poverty up to 1999. Advisor to the Consumer Affairs Group up to 2002, Deputy Economic Advisor, Ministry of Home Affairs, 2003, then Industrial Policy and Promotion, Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. He was the Director till 2011, and Director General of NIESBD in Noida until 2015, Economic Advisor to the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare till 2018. And he's the advisor on the IES cadre of Economic Affairs till 2019, and now he's the Director General of National Productivity Council till date. Dr. Jha will be presenting the next case study.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pahwa. Thank you, PhD Chamber of Commerce, UKRI, and our host, Ms. Daniel. It is really a good opportunity for me to speak about the National Productivity Council, which is a government organization. And we are into the business of enhancing productivity across the sector, across the gender, across the man, machine, and organization. Our motto is to increase the productivity everywhere. So I will just share what we are doing on Industry 4 in order to increase it to the level of $5 trillion by 2025, which is our goal. So that out of this $5 trillion economy, $1 trillion has to come from the industry. As somebody was mentioning, that we have to have 25% of share of manufacturing in the total GDP, as Mr. Pahwa was saying, which is currently at 18%. And for achieving that, we need to grow at the rate of 9% for GDP and more than 12% for industry sector as a whole, which is a daunting task. And you can imagine this with the size of India, at what fast rate we have to grow. But nonetheless, we are all determined to do that. And in that thing, how Industry 4 will play a role, which is quite, imaginative, and you can imagine how it will help us. So, as you will go through it, that we have taken upon ourselves, the country has taken upon ourselves different kind of program, Make in India, National Mission on Interdisciplinary Cyber Physical System, the Smart City, Digital India program. So digital, and then Samarth Udyog, that is Industry 4 competitiveness. So this Digital India program, as you have seen that our country has taken a leap forward, leapfrog jump during the COVID pandemic area. And even we did not expect so much of digital transformation taking place right from the grassroots level, right from the rural area. Like I don't remember when did I visit the bank and when did I use my laptop. Everything I am doing is on my mobile. Even share stock exchange, everything is on mobile. So this revolution has helped. I am talking about right from the beginning, everywhere from the grassroots level. And in this sector, the National Productivity Council is focusing on MSME, micro, small and medium sector, which is almost 60 million organization, 60 million MSMEs are there, providing job to almost 120 million persons. So how do we transform this sleeping giant into a proactive, moving beast? And to that, our main goal is to provide them, some kind of support so that they can transform into a digital, total digitalization. And let me give you an example that most of our MSME sector are without any website. They have their emails, etc., but they do not have their website on their own. I'm just giving you the opportunity, huge opportunity which is lying there. Secondly, how do we make them ready to assess whether they can shift to digital platform or not? And for that, we have made a tool which is called, you can see here, a smart industry, tool which we call Bharat 4. Through that, they can assess whether they are ready to transform to digital platform or not. So that is a very handy thing, and we are now going to make an advanced digital, software through which any industry, they can see all the processes wherever they have to have digital intervention by way of smart manufacturing, so that they can shift to that. And what we have found that if these MSME sector, even if 10% takes up this kind of activity, through demonstration effect in their cluster, over the next 4 to 5 years, others will also take the advantage, because the moment they will see that how these tools, software, IoT, etc., has helped these organizations in reducing the rejection rate. The major problem is of rejection rate. The moment they will realize that they have been able to reduce their rejection and wastages and increase the margin, they will shift to this. So we have also made an experience during our organization where a person, an industrialist, can travel and just walk through and see what all he requires, because he needs to see some kind of audio visual system through which they can get convinced. And 5 organizations have also been assessed on their readiness presently, and soon we are going to cover almost 200 organizations, and then we will encourage them to shift. And what we are doing, we are currently giving them the option of installing very, very low cost automation, system by which they can reduce their rejection rate from the current level of average of 2% to 0.1%. So that is our, objective, and this is what we are doing. And mainly through other efficiency, when we will do this, I just want to add that they will also be ready to become energy efficient, because all these processes, somewhere they will have energy consumption devices which will also be allowed to decrease so that their margin can improve. And that will have a very good environmental result also. So thank you very much. That is what I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much. If you have any question, then you can direct here on our website and our contact. No.
Thank you, Mr. Jha. We have two more case studies. We have next, we'd like to invite Mike Eldred, FAR AES Industrial Director, BAE Systems, as next speaker.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Hi, thanks.
Namaste, everybody. Mike, I had introduced you earlier, Mike Eldred.
Yes. Okay,
yes.
So
you're currently the program director accountable for successful execution of a high value and complex defense acquisition program to an Indian end user contracted by the US government. And then you're also responsible and accountable for discharge of the subsequent significant offset obligation, which works in India mainly. You've had roles with Rolls-Royce Nuclear, where you led a major integrated business planning and control transformation project. Mike has held several roles across BAE doing combat systems, mine warfare, unmanned systems, and small ships. UK's Trident replacement submarine program. Mike, everyone would like to see your presentation next. Thank you.
Thanks, Deepak. So apologies, I don't have a presentation, so I'll try to get through my case study very quickly. So hi, everyone. I work for BAE Systems, as Deepak said. BAE Systems, obviously a very major defence contractor. We've got about 80,000 people throughout the world. Roughly half of those are in the UK, half in the US, and then we have a number of strategic markets globally that we export our products into. One of those markets is India, and we have about 100 people working full-time for BAE Systems in India. I have spent lots of time in India. I ran the M777 program, which is a big defense program on behalf of the US government. So that's a bit of background. I guess if you look back across our sort of historic and current engagements between BAE Systems and India, they span both the private and public sector. We've got relationships with HAL, and TASL on a number of defence aerospace projects. And on the land side, we've got enduring relationships with the Ordnance Factory Board and Mahindra. And Mahindra was actually the company that we selected to transfer our final assembly capability from our US and UK plants, and we made the strategic decision to transfer that into India. So that's what I spent sort of 3 years of my life doing. Through that contract, we've also supported India with their Make in India commitments. We've got relationships with over 80 Indian offset partners, small to medium enterprises, and also some of the Indian titans as well. So that's the sort of current commitments. In future, we absolutely do intend to develop and strengthen our collaboration with India, and we see that very much as collaboration, not all about defence exports. There's plenty of opportunities to transfer our capabilities to India, but also look to transfer some of the very high-end capabilities that were described earlier back into the UK. We look to work together to provide routes to market, either for BAE Systems into India or some of the networks we have with other nations, helping India export some of their products into the nations we work with. And I guess the last point I just wanted to talk about was sort of what makes effective defence exports. And really, there's three things for me. The first thing is to look at it as a long-term relationship. Any trading on an international basis needs to have enticements, if you like, to make them long-term. Each partner has to have an appetite for risk and reward. We've talked about some of those enablers earlier in terms of IP protection, etc. But you know, both parties need to go into it eyes wide open. And really, the last point was around ease of doing business. So I think the statistic that I saw earlier was India a 62nd on the list, and I've got considerable on the ground experience of transferring production from the UK and US into India. And sometimes it feels like India's first on the list, and sometimes it feels like it's 1,000th on the list, even though the list isn't that long. So I think that ease of business is a real critical enabler for companies to make that leap and create that inward investment. So happy to take more questions in the round table, but that was me. Thank you, Deepak.
Thank you, Mike. And we'd like to move on to the last case study. This is from Katarzyna. She's going to be covering the expansion into India to support major infrastructure projects. And Kat is a sales manager at McAlloy.
McAlloy, yeah. Thank you. I'm conscious of time, so I prepared I think the shortest presentation in my life. I'm just gonna fly through it. So just very briefly about McAlloy. This is a very special year for us. This is our 100 years anniversary, and we hope, despite COVID, we're gonna have a chance to to celebrate it and spend some time just inviting some people whenever it's possible. So we McAlloy manufacture different steel rods, tension rods or PT bars, and we basically export it all over the world. 85% of what we manufacture goes overseas. We are based in Sheffield, and this is our only facility in here. Like I said, we were established in 1921, so this is our 100-year anniversary. I know there's a different word for it in English, but unfortunately, I don't remember it. Just to give you a brief overview, this is what we do. I think the pictures always says more than if you try to describe it. So what we do is tension rods in different finishes, compression struts, or our McAlloy 1030 bar, which is a PT bar. That's one of the projects in India we had the pleasure to supply to. And just to give you a quick overview of our Indian journey, we've been trading with India for over 40 years, but recently we were really successful, and there's few different factors that cause our big success on the Indian market. And the first of all, we have an amazing distributor in Chennai. It's somebody on the ground who helps us build relationships and market our products and just shout about McAlloy. And the second thing is we were the first on the Indian market with PT bar. So in India, any PT bar gonna be called McAlloy bar. Even if it's our competition brand, the customer will call it McAlloy bar, which is really amazing. And another factor is we're trying to visit our customers to make contact from UK, travel there, which I know is they appreciate it when somebody from UK make time and make an effort to visit them. So over the last 2 years, despite all the COVID situation, we were really successful. Lots of projects came to completion, lots of bridges. as Deepak mentioned, we were working on big projects like Bangalore Airport, Mumbai Trans-Harbour Link, various bridges in Kerala state. And this next few 5-6 years, it's going to be a really exciting time for everyone at Macaulay, because infrastructure sector has become the biggest focus, I think, in every country. And it's also happening in India. So there's lots of plans to build different bridges, airports, roads and road infrastructure. So we're really looking forward to all the things which are going to happen over the next few years. From my personal experience, I was hired at Macaulay almost 5 years ago. And basically, I was supposed to deal with European market and with Russian market. And then suddenly, Indian market just ended up with me. It was like hot potato. I don't know if anyone maybe in the company wanted to deal with it. And I need to say, from my personal perspective, I found India an amazing country, lovely, friendly people. It's very similar to Polish people. I'm always laughing that there's lots of similarities between India and Poland. Like, for example, weddings. In Poland, we also have 2-3 days long weddings. But I think we also share a similar values, which really helped me to find my feet on the ground there, to build relationships, to do business in India. Because you always have to be mindful of cultural differences. And in India, it's not everything about the business. You need to get to know each other. You need to build this relationship. You need to spend time just to develop it and make sure it's growing. Yeah, it's been an amazing and a very interesting journey. And just a couple of differences, like, for example, in India, everything takes much longer than anywhere else in the world. The decision process is really long, and you have to be patient. I also, at the beginning, didn't understand why nobody says no to me directly or refusing to me directly. But it's just small bits, like I said, small differences. So yeah, I'm happy to take any questions. And as I promised, I was trying to keep it brief. So that's all from me.
Thank you, Kat. Looks like you've begun to understand India quite well. And that's good to know. I've had the pleasure of visiting Poland, and also one of your famous salt mines, which is world famous, which I recommend everyone to see sometime in their lifetime. Anyway, let's go on. The next session to be chaired by Mike Maddock. In the meantime, we had apportioned a few minutes for question answers. If Danielle has received a few questions, I'd request her to read them out if there's still time.
So I did. I've only had one question that came through to me, which was around graphene for Mike and Adrian. And as we're going on now to a session on graphene, I thought it'd be useful if we carried that one over into that session. Apart from that, unless anybody has any questions that they want to raise to any of our panelists.
Yeah, I don't want to raise a question. I want to add a comment. Graphene is a wonder material. And it's good to see what he showed, and everyone should be interested in listening to something more and deeper on that subject. It has many applications everywhere, so it is the wonder material. As many materials are being developed this century, this is having a hot position in that. So I'm going to hand it over to Mike Maddock and to Daniel, and politely exit from my role.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much for assisting us up to this point, Deepak. It's been absolutely fantastic. Thanks for your time.
Thank you all.
So June, over to you, June. So June, we heard from earlier from Make UK is going to take Mike and Adrian through their paces even further on graphene. So over to you, June. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniela. So some great presentations so far today, and I'm very pleased to bring back onto the stage, so to speak, Mike Maddock and Adrian Nixon from Nixine and Pez Performance. We're also going to be joined on our virtual panel by Mr. Arun Kumar Jha, Director General of the National Productivity Council in India. So welcome, Mr. Jha, also. So the format for the round table is going to be Mike and Adrian are going to have a deep dive now into graphene, just to give us a little bit more understanding about this marvelous product that we've got. And then we'll take questions and answers afterwards. So Mike and Adrian, could I just hand straight over to you, please?
So I'll start off and take you all through a very, very quick run through. Probably in about 5 minutes, I'll probably take you through about 30 minutes of content. Now, don't worry, there are more slides here than we've possibly got time to show you all, but these slides are all available for you afterwards. So either contact Daniela or contact me and Mike and we'll get you a copy. So let's start off, Mike. Can we have a look at the slide? Next slide.
Okay, does that work? I've lost visual.
It's, yeah, I can see the PowerPoint in slideshow mode. Yeah, so it's not too bad. But if you, there we go. Yep, and if you click onto the next slide. So graphene is carbon and it's like a chicken wire. That's all you need to know. It's the same stuff as in diamonds, as in pencils. The guys who isolated this he won the Nobel Prize for doing the work in Manchester in 2004. And the interesting thing was, prior to 2004, it was thought impossible that graphene could exist. People knew about it, but they didn't realize it could be isolated. And Andrea and Kostya did the work in Manchester in the UK and discovered that it has all these amazing properties that Mike's shown you already. And they won the Nobel Prize in 2010. So next slide, Mike. Very briefly, graphene as a whole is just part of a family of carbon materials. These are called allotropes, just the different ways that carbon atoms are joined together. If they're joined together in one way, in a three-dimensional structure, they'll make diamond. If they're joined together in a two-dimensional structure, a flat sheet, they make graphene. You've also got carbon nanotubes, which you probably have heard of, and fullerenes. We could dive into that in a lot more detail, but basically it's just a form of carbon, but it has some incredible properties. Next slide, please, Mike. It's also part of a landscape of materials called two-dimensional materials. And this was the second paper that Kostya and Andre put out. And this is worth another Nobel Prize just on its own. It's opened up a whole new landscape of materials called 2D materials. And there are some 2,000 of these materials. So it's not just graphene. And this is going to keep researchers and industry going for generations to come. But we haven't got time to talk about that, just to make you aware of it. Next slide, please, Mike. You've seen that. It does all these wonderful things. And as a result of that, it's had a hype. So graphene, when it was discovered or isolated, then the Nobel Prize was awarded. Everybody thought we're going to see graphene on the scale of rugs and carpets, and this is some graphene as a liquid. And people thought, oh, you've got black powders and liquids, what does it do? So they tried adding it to things and found it made things worse to start off with. And gradually people have now started to find that you can pull off the addition rate. So these black powders, here's another sample of black powder graphene. You add less is more. So if you're adding that to polymer composites, you'll get fantastic results in concrete, as Mike's shown you. And graphene can also be made as a sheet. So it can be made as a thin one atomic film on copper foil. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So these are just starting to be, copper foil, sheet graphene is starting to be industrially manufactured now. Graphene powders are already here and doing amazing things. Next slide, please.
I'm just saying, it's also on the hype curve. It's we're quite keen to, we're almost reintroducing this back into the UK, because obviously we were the leads. I would say we're probably the global academic lead, wouldn't you, Adrian? But we are starting to slip behind the curve in terms of the commercialization and applied research now, just because of that hype curve.
Yeah, people got involved with graphene in the really early days, got the fingers burned, made some mistakes without realizing it. They're at the bleeding edge of technology rather than the leading edge. And now we're recovering back from that, and people are beginning to wake up to the fantastic work that's going on around the world. This stuff is going to change the world. Better move on. So I've talked about powders and sheet graphene. That's as much as we need to know at the moment. The bulk of the work is being done with powders. Sheet graphene is starting to emerge now industrially. Next slide, please, Mike. And graphene is made from graphite. So basically, graphite is like a stack of these two-dimensional layers put up on top of one another. And it's a bit like graphene you could think of as being like a single card in a deck of cards. And that will do for our knowledge now. So moving on, Mike. It can be made by a variety of methods. Basically, it's peeling these different layers apart. One interesting thing that's just been discovered last year in the USA, you can now make graphene from waste plastic. And it can also be made from crop waste biochar. So we're starting to see environmentally sustainable sources of graphene, which is beginning to move on to the question that was asked earlier. So move on, Mike.
And just on that way, because we're hosting COP26 in November in the UK, we're really keen to actually emphasise the impact that graphene will make on the environment.
Yeah, and this crop waste one is actually a carbon negative manufacturing process. It absorbs carbon dioxide as a result of when you take into account all the manufacturing and the movement around the transport. Yep, next slide, please, Mike. This is how you make graphene on copper foil. You get methane gas and get it very hot, get it close to a metal surface. The hydrogens come off the methane, the carbon lands on the surface and connects up and covers the surface in a one atom thick layer of graphene. That's basically how it works. Great. There are some issues making it, and the researchers are working with this at the minute. It creates what's called polycrystalline graphene. So the graphene isn't quite connected up together in a perfect sheet yet, but people are working on that. Next slide, Mike. And that's what it looks like. Very few people will have seen this slide, so pay attention to this one in particular. Can you see down the left-hand side where Mike's pointing, that slightly darker line? That's the bare copper. And then on the right-hand side, can you see it's slightly more silvery? What you're looking at there is the difference between a one atom thin layer of graphene on the surface and the background metal. That, until a couple of years ago, that's never been seen before. And I took that picture myself at the Geek in Manchester. Moving on, Mike. This is polycrystalline graphene and what's called single crystal graphene. And crystal in this context just means a repeating pattern. And basically, we're trying to move from where we are on the left-hand side, where there are slight discontinuities in the sheet, to making sheet graphene that's perfect with no defects in it whatsoever. And we're beginning to get there already. Next slide, please, Mike. And when we talk about a crystal, don't think of something that's brittle and will shatter. This is something which is flexible. And I've used the example of a sheet of plastic cling film here to illustrate the idea. That's what we'll be aiming for, making something like that. And the pace that this whole manufacturing process is developing at is astonishing. Really pay attention to this. Next slide, please, Mike. This is just the difference between polycrystalline and single crystal. One's perfect, the other one's got holes in it and discontinuities. We'll move on. So is it possible to make this single crystal graphene? Yes, because it's a single molecule at the scale of meters, centimeters, but also kilometers. This is where the industrial manufacture is headed. So next slide, please, Mike. In China, single crystal graphene's already been made 0.5 meter long. That's a single molecule 0.5 meter long on copper foil. Next slide, please, Mike. And is it possible to make it fast? Next slide, please. The answer is yes. In Europe, the Graphene flagship has already funded a process. This is what you're looking at there is a graphene manufacturing machine in the Geek. You remember that building where Mike and I work in Manchester. This is in the basement in there. And there's a vertical furnace which is making graphene on the surface of the copper, and it can make already 20,000 square meters of graphene per year on metal foil. Next slide, please, Mike. In America, this is general graphene. They've got a roll-to-roll process. This one's a horizontal furnace, and this can make graphene at the capacity of right now of 100,000 square meters per year. Next slide, please, Mike. And if you look there in the circle, you'll actually see different layers of graphene. So this is the general graphene process. There's the piece sample on the far left-hand side in the red circle is just the plain PET film. This is plastic that drinks bottles made out of, used as a support. Then the one next to it has got 1 atomic layer of graphene on it. Then the one next to that has got 5 atomic layers, and then the next one 10 atomic layers. So the manufacturing process is getting very sophisticated already. Not only can it make graphene on the copper, it can take it off the foil and lay it onto other substrates and do that at industrial quantities. Next slide, please, Mike. And also in Korea, this is another graphene manufacturing process. This just came out of a dark secret project last year, as did the previous one that we've seen. These are only a few months old. The key takeaway from this is you can already make graphene at high speed. This can make graphene at 1 meter per minute already. Next slide, please, Mike. And that's over to you.
Okay, we're on the products. I think within time, June, are you, do you want to ask some questions? Because I think we've sort of covered the point that the graphene is out there and then it's being disseminated into the market, and there is a level of adoption globally.
Yeah, I mean, I think in answer to the first part of the question that was posed about the ecological implications, we've already said that it adds to a process, reducing the amount of other materials that need to be in there. It adds to the ability to recycle, reduce waste. So I think the answer to that ecological implications has to be it's positive. I don't know if you want to just add, and somebody said, what specifically do you see the future of graphene usage in India? Whether it's India or anywhere globally, take that as a question, please. And also maybe just chat about the skills element with relation to the very high caliber of Indian graduates that we know are out there.
Adrian, do you want to pick up the application?
Sure can. Yes, it was mentioned earlier that a majority of CEOs in American and British companies are from Indian origin. It's exactly the same with the scientific and the business community involved in graphene. We're working with a lot of Indian nationals or people of Indian origin on a daily basis, aren't we, Mike? And the sheer quality of the brain power of Indian people working in this field is incredible.
Well, we have a Ravi, a specialist, haven't we, who's on our advisory board.
And the example you've got here, the graphene in the sports shoes, this is a company established by Aravind in Manchester. He works at, he's one of the PhDs in research scientists at Manchester University, and also quite entrepreneurial as well, been involved in creating the graphene enhanced rubber that fit in the soles of the shoes. Graphene will just hit every single sector you can possibly think of, from power, battery supercapacitors, through to high performance plastics, recycling rubber, recycling concrete, you name it. And Mike will actually show you some of this. On top of that, the good and the bad, there's been a lot of work done on the toxicity of graphene to look and see if there are any negative effects. As far as anybody can tell so far, graphene is non-toxic. This stuff ain't going to kill you, which is one of the reasons why I'm working in this field myself. It's not going to kill me.
That's good to know, Adrian.
and in terms of our business point of view, the reason we put Nixine Limited together is that we are developing a commercial and process for manufacture. And we're just getting that to the key stage. Hence, we're talking with the US at the moment in terms of investment, desperately trying to find investment in the UK, but we're trying to get the UK government to sit up and take some notice, especially when we're sort of supporting and helping the strategy in the US. And from a global perspective, it is driving across the board. So it's really for governments and technologists to start to adopt and embrace and talk to ourselves to see how we could take this forward. Because as you say, I mean, especially in the space environment, we're doing a lot of focus for the US on space. So in terms of lighter coatings, lightweighting, ECM capabilities, anti-radiation capabilities, heat shielding, you know, you can just name it. And also with Adrian sitting on the International Space Elevator Consortium, the one challenge that needs to be unlocked currently is the tether into space for the elevator to operate. And that's where we have our technology and the capability to develop that over the next 5 to 10 years. And we've been talking to a lot of companies. Adrian, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I do. Most people think the space elevator is science fiction. It's been dismissed about the turn of the century, but NASA's done work showing that this is a doable piece of technology with today's technology, apart from the fact that the material to make the tether out of, which is a piece of material which connects space to Earth. And the key thing there to make that is, does the industrial process exist to actually make graphene in sheets at the scale of kilometers and hundreds of kilometers and thousands of kilometers? And what you're seeing already, just from my brief presentation there, is 17 years ago, graphene was thought impossible to exist. Now it can be made by the kilometer at scale, at speed already. The pace with which this is moving is astonishing. This is one area you really need to keep an eye on. And the space elevator now is going to be one of those amazing technologies which will be unlocked by this.
Yeah, and the adoption of the powders and also moving into the 2D material sphere, which is obviously where the research is now and where we're driving to take that forward, is just going to unlock. I mean, we talk about 4.0 and we call this a frontier material. And it's the way that we've been positioned with the US Senate. It is a frontier material, and it would look, to take us into 5.0 and take some of the challenges away of rare earth materials, etc. And the adoption should be global, absolutely global, because it will save the planet in terms of the CO2 emission. We could unlock, as you see, that just on concrete. If we could just get that adoption and trials and research to take that to the next level, where Mexico has embraced that. I think the Geek has now just started to do some trials in Manchester on concrete.
Yeah,
so in
we were
terms of
talking with them yesterday, Mike.
Could I just bring we've got a question, guys. Could I just bring Ken in, please, and ask what is your question, Ken? Can you unmute yourself?
Thanks, June. Yeah, just a quick question, really. You mentioned about the ability to produce graphene from plant waste and waste plastics. I'm just a bit curious about the process. Is that like an industrial biotech process that's being used to extract it, or is it more of a?
It's simpler than that, Ken. The one which makes graphene from waste plant material is it takes biochar and then puts it into a very high temperature pulse of heat. And what that does, that pulls the biochar apart. It's about 1100 degrees C. And when it reforms as graphene, and you get graphene coming out the other end. So it's basically a continuous process. It's an angled rotating furnace, in effect. I can tell you more details about that later. The other process, which was invented in the States, is called flash graphene, and that takes waste plastic and blitzes it with a very high AC pulse of electricity followed by a pulse of DC electricity. Again, that blitzes the material apart, and then it reforms again and comes together as graphene. And there's a company now called Universal Matter, which has just been founded in Canada and got a $5 million grant to scale this process up. So you'll start hearing about that probably Q1 2022.
Thanks, Adrian. Ken, I hope that answers your question for you.
Just something on that, Ken, as well. It's really interesting, especially on the recyclability of plastics, which has just come out last year, and the patent is a fact. We will get to a point that we'll be able to open refuse sites and start recycling all the plastics that we actually, stuck under the ground.
Yeah, and it's not just plastics. Anything containing carbon will actually do. I think the researchers, for a joke, put some dog poo in and actually made graphene out of that too. So anything that contains carbon can be used.
I also have another question, guys. The question is, instead of looking at using graphene for space applications, how much work is being carried out for water filtration purposes?
Loads.
Have a greater need for clean water.
Great question.
Yeah. You can use graphene to make membranes, which can enhance the rate at which reverse osmosis works. You can also use powdered graphene to make filtration membranes, and you can use electric current to switch the water flow on and off through there. So you can desalinate. Also, we're finding one of the new materials of these other 2D materials, something called molybdenum disulfide, that's being used to filter water out from extremely corrosive environments and make a very corrosion-resistant material filter. There are lots of space applications for recycling water with graphene membranes too. Again, if anybody's interested in the detail of that, feel free to contact us. But Lots of
Thanks,
applications.
Adrian.
And just
I
on that
think-
as well, James Baker's party trick. James is head of the Geek. He came out to DC with us with Senator Wicker, and he had a filtration system where he poured whiskey through the top, and then out the bottom came water. So it shows how good. I don't think the Scots amongst us will be that happy about that.
I'm just
but
going to say what a
really-
waste of whiskey.
But just to answer that question.
Thanks, Mike. I think what this has demonstrated is that nothing phases these two when you get a question, and that they're just the wide application of graphene. So, you know, any more questions, keep them coming, whether it's privately or to us after the event, and I'm sure Mike and Adrian will be happy to answer them.
Sorry, June. Yeah, I just wanted you did ask a question earlier on, which I'm quite keen to answer, is about the skills. You know, having spent time, I went over to India and I visited Bombay IT. And just the talent that's within India and the talent pool and the young engineers at PhD level is something that we need to work closely with and collaborate with, because this will help to unlock these technologies and more technologies, and also the adoption of materials as you know, for the sustainability answer for the globe. But also the point in terms of 4.0, in the UK, we're still challenging to get the digital revolution driven forward. And strangely, as we know, COVID has picked that up. But we need this new generation to come through of engineers and scientists to make sure we can take the globe and our respective countries to the next levels.
I think Mike's just demonstrated why he is my 4.0 and net zero champion at Make UK for the north of England. Thanks for that, Mike. So this is the Advanced Materials Masterclass, and I'm just conscious that we picked on Mike and Adrian to give this presentation as a really rounded example of the fantastic work that's happening in the north of England on advanced materials, and we could have picked on other composite materials. That they're certainly not in isolation, although in my experience it's one of the most interesting ones. So for investors, you know, looking at the UK from India, you know, please don't be shy. We're here, we're open for business, and we want to hear from you, whether it's the skills element, whether it's knowledge transfer, working together, trade opportunities. Please get in touch. We are very, very interested to open our door to you.
June, just another one as well. You mentioned composite materials. Well, we need to jump in there as well. There's research going on graphene composites. With the addition of graphene, we're getting a 15% strength improvement in carbon composites, and then through glass reinforced plastics, anything to 30 to 40% improvement. So therefore, you're using less resin, less material when you're using these materials to move forward. So whilst we said we didn't use composites, graphene will just underpin everything you'll almost talk about, June.
And also that's contributing towards net zero, isn't it? Because it's reducing, you know, other materials. I am going to have to round this up because I've promised that I will help us pull back onto time. But I think you can gather by looking at Mike and Adrian, laughing at Mike, we just have so much to say on this absolutely fantastic subject. So please keep the conversation coming offline if you want to do so. And I'm going to hand it back over now to Danielle. Thank you very much.
Honestly, I could listen to that all day. Thank you so much, Mike, Adrian and June. That was brilliant. Fantastic product, just, you know, wow, in every single sense. Yes, so try to get us back on time. Thank you very much, June. Fantastic chair skills there, I must say. I'm going to very swiftly hand over to Karen French from Squire, Patton, Boggs, who's got a few questions to ask to some of our panelists. And if anybody has any additional questions that you want to pose to any of our panelists and speakers today, please add them to the chat. Thank you. Over to you, Karen.
Thank you, Daniela. And isn't this a great problem to have? Too much to say, too many interesting things, really exciting points. We nearly had to put Mike and Adrian into room 101 chair to make space for the next panelists, who very, very kindly agreed to join the conversation for the next 10 to 15 minutes or so. So I'll be joined, and if those, as and when answer questions, if you would unmute yourselves. So Kat from Macalloy and Mike Eldred from BAE, as well as Dr. Jatindher Singh and Dr. Ashish Mohan. We've heard from you all earlier in today's session. And what I'm going to focus on now is just perhaps some more general points here. And really, if I could maybe turn to you, Mike, first, and Kat, and just ask a general question about kind of top tips for doing your trade with India. Are there any sort of takeaways that we can give our audience, the experiences that you have had, and any pointers that you can give our listeners for things that you have learnt. Mike, maybe if you could pick that one up first.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think we all think of India as a country, clearly, which it is, but having experience of working in India around all the states, it's a hugely complex nation, very multicultural within its own geographical boundaries, enormous distances between places. So I think often, certainly when I first started to think about transferring work out there, we thought of it as one nation, but actually I think just get your head around the complexity of the scale, be it, geography wise and culturally wise, and it's really basic things like just understand time differences. That makes things hard. If you're developing schedules, then you need to build in contingency, because things will go wrong, and that's nothing to do with how easy it is to trade with India, but it's sometimes very difficult to trade from the UK as well. We have a number of bureaucratic challenges to overcome in the UK as well. So things do take longer than you initially plan, but the learning curve is pretty steep. And your initial activities, in my experience, do take much longer than planned. But then actually, when you're in sort of repeat production, then that's when the benefits really start to come, either be it cost, quality, or schedule. So that's what I'd say.
Kat, do you want to add anything to that question in terms of takeaway experiences from the work that you have been doing on behalf of McAloy with India?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Mike, and trying to sell or do business with India, you have to remember it's such a big and diverse country. It's better sometimes to start focusing on a small bit or certain states, and then trying to expand whatever activity you plan. That would be my advice. And as I mentioned before, it's good to prepare yourself if you never had to do anything with India. It's good to prepare yourself and just check about cultural differences like greeting, just the basic stuff like greeting, addressing people, and the most important thing, just remember, you have to build a relationship. It's not going to be straightforward and quick, just going there and doing business. This is a really time-consuming process, but it's worth it, in my opinion. It's worth to spend time and be patient.
And building those relationships would be typically with who in this sort of contracting company that you're working with, or with the trade associations that support, or even getting to know some of the staff, the employees, and getting to upskill so that your products, in fact, it's a separate question really, are your products being manufactured in India as opposed to distributed? But how have you built those relationships? Kind of at what level? And have you done that in India or in the UK or virtually or how?
In any way possible, to be honest. So from my obviously personal experience, the most important relationship for me is the relationship with my distributor in India, who is our representative on Indian market. So that's like the first one. Then obviously we're building relationship with different people. It can be engineers in different companies, designers. McAloy tries to build relationship with different public works departments, because they're responsible for projects paid with public money, like bridges, airports, and road infrastructure. So it's a different people. We're trying to be present from the design stage of the project, like a bridge or airport, until the final stage, which is a supply of our product. So you have to try to, like I said, grow and develop relationship with completely different people.
Just taking that one step further, have you invited back over to Sheffield, where your manufacturing is carried out? Have you invited your Indian counterparts and distributors so they can come to you to see how you work, how your relationships are, what your processes are, etc.?
Yes, obviously our distributor was present in our facilities. We had a training and different business discussions, but whenever possible, we also trying to invite our partners or engineers. Before COVID, the last visit we had, it was like 8 engineers from Kerala Public Works Department, just to give them an idea how our manufacturing process look like. You need to make those people to trust you. It's not going to be built overnight, so there's lots of work to put in it. But like I said, it's really worth it. At the end of the day, we're really doing a lot of business with India right now.
Thank you. Dr. Singh, could I turn to you and just ask for your view on what might be some of the initial challenges that some of our businesses might face if they were startups, or not startup companies, but first time beginning to think about trading with India. What are the, if you like, the top handful of points that they need to think about or practice or do first?
I think the major challenges is that the regulatory thing, particularly with respect to tariffs and taxation. Although we have now eased corporate tax also, and other revenues are also given to startups and also MSMEs. But I think there has to be more government-to-government agreements in order to go for some sort of exchange of future technologies. Because what we are seeing that the emphasis on research and development needs to be given more. And in that context, already we have our CSR law also, wherein companies, they are definitely spending a certain proportion of revenue on corporate social responsibility, which also includes research and development. And what I think that there is requirement of greater access to world-class IT capabilities. I think that is somewhat a challenge our startups are facing, although we are in fact surmounting this challenge also. But particularly if we talk about advanced manufacturing, and as we know that right now we are at the cusp of digital transformation. So in terms of productivity gains, how to drive these productivity gains in both existing and developing supply chains between UK and India, it's very important that there has to be a wide program of collaborative activity, and I think that needs to be given a thrust because what we have seen that there is extensive scale of India's production. The market is huge, the market is growing, and in fact, in terms of UK, you have the best of the high quality research and development capability, in particularly in manufacturing. So both of these things can be coupled together and ensure that the challenges our startups or our small industries are facing, most of these things definitely can be surmounted. So what I think, there has to be more bilateral events to establish a strategic dialogue between both of these countries, or involving all important stakeholders, the commercial aspect, the academic, as well as policy makers, both in India and UK. So I'm sure that, for example, there are some joint funding competitions that's happening in advanced manufacturing. For example, we have a very important platform, Newton Bhaba platform, and many new themes are being identified. So I think more needs to be done. And so my point is that, particularly in order to scale up the startups of both countries as well as small enterprises, there has to be more G2G engagement to in fact ease tariffs and taxations, which is one of the biggest drivers of the manufacturing demand. And particularly if we see some of the important sectors like aerospace, defense manufacturing, this is very important because there are a lot of, high level buy-in, and it also sets the tone for more efficient negotiation. So I'm sure that if there is more, openness in terms of, more policy dialogue between both countries, most of these challenges can be surmounted, and we can see our startups as well as our SMEs, going in a big way. Thank you.
So just one final point, and it kind of always to me comes down to people. Kat, you have talked a lot about relationships and people, and here we are in a virtual masterclass and event, which actually very, very interestingly brings us all so much closer together. I found it quite interesting myself through the last year when we, as we are all now, I think everybody is working from their home, the odd one perhaps in an office environment. But just a quick question to Mike and Kat, if you feel that the last year has actually perhaps opened up opportunities and work practices that might well have improved the future for us. Do you have a view on that?
Yeah, I think, I predominantly operate within the aerospace sector, so clearly that's taken a significant downturn in the commercial sector, particularly over the 12 months, and that's going to take some time to recover. But what it's important is that we continue to identify relationships with Indian industry. So when those markets do pick up, we are both jointly primed, ready to go and exploit them together. Well, I guess the last point I'd make is, whilst the pandemic has obviously been devastating, what it's actually meant is it's accelerated a lot of our capability transfer. Whereas I think there was a term earlier used of hand holding, whereby we would use British or American employees to help transfer that capability. We've not been able to do that. We've not been able to go to India, so we've actually done a lot more of it remotely. And what we've found is that because we've delegated that responsibility, if you like, earlier, it's actually hastened that transition of capability. We've been forced to take a risk. We haven't had a choice, and it's actually paid off. So I think that's another thing we can all reflect on. If you do let the reins go a bit, then things can move somewhat quicker.
I think a lot of different businesses, not just the ones we're talking about today, and the countries we're talking about today, will have experienced the same, and we just shows that even the elder ones amongst us can adapt as appropriate to the situation we all find ourselves in. Kat, have you got any final words on behalf of Macalloy that you want to add to that?
Yes, just from my, maybe not the company itself, but I hate it. I just hate this virtual reality. I'm very old-fashioned, nothing gonna replace for me just sitting down with a cup of coffee and having a chat with a customer. But obviously we all have to adapt. And on the other hand, the previous year, the amount of presentations I was able to do, I would never be able to do it like, let's call it in real life, commuting from one company to another. So it definitely gave us like a lot of oomph, and it got us to speed. But still, from my personal point of view, I always prefer to go and see customer face to face. Plus, to be honest, I'm always happy to escape from English weather somewhere nice. So.
Thank you. Well, look, I would just like to hand back to Sharon Jandu to close today's session. But on behalf of myself and Daniela from Squire, Patton, Boggs, thank you from us. Sharon, over to you.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Daniela, for doing such a sterling job. Another fantastic masterclass. I know everything that you need to know now about graphene. I feel absolutely, and I think the dog poo thing that worried me a little bit, but other than that, I was fascinated with that particular session. Mr. Pahwa ji, Deepak ji, thank you so much for chairing the session. Jatindher Singh, thank you so much for your support. PhD Chamber have worked with us shoulder to shoulder on this throughout the whole of the 5-day masterclasses and also throughout the whole sessions. Mike and Adrian, the graphene presentation, thank you so much for your support. June, Make UK. We couldn't have done this. We couldn't make this without you. I mean, you've been there with us right from the beginning. Mike from BAE Systems, thank you so much for your presentation, and fascinated to know that you're already doing so much in India, and very valuable points around culture and the fact that India is country within countries. And I think, Kat, you made that same point, and you're absolutely right. I think the Polish community and the Indian community have got a lot in common, the whole celebration. But I have to tell you that the Indian weddings are not 3-4 days, they're probably more like weeks. So, and I'd also like to say, I know that he's left, but Dr. Mohan and the CII for their contribution. Our partners for this session were Squire, Patton, Boggs, Make UK, PhD Chamber of Commerce, the Confederation of Indian Industry. So thank you, everybody, and I'd like to wish you good evening and good afternoon. Thank you so much. Sorry, Mr. Kumar Jha, I missed you. You are in the corner. Thank you so much for your presentation. That is a problem when you're having virtual sessions. Sometimes there's not enough little boxes on your screen. So Namaskar Ji, thank you so much for your presentation. We're indebted to you. Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks.